You think I'm going to breed with a human? The alien queen's laugh echoed through the vast chamber, a sound like distant thunder, as if the very walls trembled in response. You have got to be kidding. Humans are so fragile, so weak. Your species can't even survive a simple space trip without puking all over themselves. How do you expect me to interact with one of you? Her name was Tar, a towering, 8-foot-tall creature of shimmering dark scales with multiple eyes that seemed to glimmer like the stars themselves. Her voice carried a commanding, almost condescending tone. She was a queen, a ruler, and she had no interest in anything as trivial as mating with a human. Yet, as her laughter subsided and the words faded into the stillness of the alien ship, something shifted in the air. A subtle change, barely perceptible, yet undeniable. The young human ambassador, Derek, a mere 5 feet 9 inches by comparison, stood there, trying not to let his knees buckle under the weight of her gaze. "Why?" he asked, his voice steady despite the situation. "Why did you even entertain the idea of mating with a human?" Tara's smile faded as she looked at him, her many eyes narrowing. "Because, little one, your species is pathetic, but also incredibly curious. The things I could learn from you would be amusing, I suppose. And perhaps it would make you stop talking about breeding and genetic exchange, da." She flicked her tongue, a long, sinuous thing that shot out like a serpent's, tasting the air. "I understand," Derek said cautiously, knowing the time for humor was over. "But there's a reason I came. A reason your people haven't wiped us out yet. We have something to offer. Something more than just curiosity." Tar raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. She was intrigued, just enough to hear him out, but still entirely skeptical. The days that followed would change everything Derek thought he knew about the universe, about power, and about the nature of life itself. It all began, strangely enough, with a bet. It was an odd, almost whimsical thing. The challenge. The queen, Tar, had offered it to Derek in a way that seemed almost dismissive at first. She had no intention of taking it seriously, thinking it was another futile human notion that would fizzle out. But as the days went by, Derek's persistence started to chip away at her walls. "You're absolutely sure about this?" Tar had asked, one of her eyes narrowing suspiciously. "I'm sure," Derek replied, meeting her gaze head-on. "You want to prove humanity is weak? Fine, but I think you underestimate us. I'll do whatever it takes to show you that we can survive, adapt, and even thrive under circumstances you can't even imagine." Tar paused, her many eyes flickering with amusement and something else, a glint of curiosity. Her kind had seen billions of species over the centuries, many more resilient than humanity. But none had come across quite as unpredictable as this. "What are the terms?" she asked, finally relenting, though her voice was laced with skepticism. "I propose we test both our endurance. You think we can't survive the conditions you're capable of, but I believe we can. If I can last through your tests, if I can prove humanity's resilience, adaptability, and strength, then you will have to reconsider your view of us," Derek said. The challenge was set. But what Derek didn't fully realize was that this would be no ordinary test. Tar's tests were not just physical. They were psychological, emotional, and even biological. The stakes were higher than he could have imagined. The first test Tar devised was one of strength. Derek was to endure a series of trials in a vast arena, with artificial gravity set to extreme levels. Tar watched with amusement as he struggled to lift weights that seemed trivial to her, but were nearly impossible for him to handle. The weights were designed to press down on him as the gravity increased, mimicking the pressure of Tar's home planet, where the gravity was nearly 3 times that of Earth's. Derek's muscles screamed for relief, his body trembling, but he refused to quit. Sweat poured down his face, and every inch of his body screamed at him to stop, but he gritted his teeth, lifting another weight, then another. He could feel Tar's eyes on him, analyzing, calculating his every move. "Impressive," Tar finally said after he completed the challenge. "Barely. But strength is only one part of survival." The next challenge came quickly. Tar placed Derek in a room where the temperature reached nearly 150 degrees Fahrenheit. No food, no water, just the harsh heat that made every breath feel like fire. Derek's throat burned. His skin threatened to blister, but he stayed focused. He could hear Tara's voice echoing through the room, her words like ice. You think you can last here, human? Your body wasn't built for such extremes. Derek's heart raced, but he found strength in the thought that he could prove her wrong. He managed to find the smallest sliver of hope by thinking of home, of Earth, of the people who had sent him to this place. His resilience became more than physical. It was a mental battle now. Is that all you have? Derek gasped, a smile creeping onto his parched lips despite the heat. Is that really the best you can do? Tar chuckled softly. You have no idea what's coming. Derek barely had time to recover before Tar's next test began. This time, it wasn't physical. She placed him in a room that was entirely dark, with no sound, no movement. Complete isolation. Derek's mind began to play tricks on him. Hours passed. Days, perhaps. Time seemed irrelevant. But then it happened. He began hearing whispers. Soft at first. Words in a language he didn't understand. His heart raced. Were these voices from his own mind? Or was there something else in the darkness? Something alive? His instinct screamed at him to escape, but he knew better than to give in to panic. He focused on staying calm, breathing deeply, remembering his training. But the whispers grew louder. The shadows began to move. Just when Derek thought he might lose his sanity, the door to the room opened with a sudden blast of light. Tar stood there, watching him with a look that was impossible to read. You survived, but at what cost? She asked, her voice low. I'm still here, Derek said, his voice hoarse. I'm not broken yet. Not broken, Tar mused. But I'm not sure you understand what's happening here, human. She paused, and Derek could see the faintest flicker of something in her many eyes. A glimpse of something more than amusement. Perhaps it was respect. Or maybe something deeper, something more complicated. You've endured more than I expected. But survival isn't just about strength or pain tolerance. It's about adaptation. And I have a different test for you now. The next trial was unlike anything Derek had experienced so far. Tar introduced a strange substance, something alien to his biology. It looked like a thick, glowing liquid suspended in a floating sphere. She informed him that it would alter his DNA, make him stronger, faster, more resilient. In short, it would make him more like her. Derek was shocked. You want me to become like you? Tar nodded. It's the only way to prove that humanity is truly capable of surviving in my world, of truly belonging here. Would you accept the challenge, human? This was the moment. Derek hesitated, his mind racing. He was human. He had fought for survival, for respect. But at what cost? Would he lose everything that made him who he was? Would he become something else entirely? But then he remembered. This was his only chance. For humanity. For Earth. For the future. Yes, he said. I'll do it. As the glowing liquid seeped into his veins, something began to change. At first, it was subtle. His heart rate slowed, and his mind sharpened. But then, as the transformation accelerated, Derek felt himself becoming stronger, his body growing, his muscles expanding, his senses heightening. Tar's eyes widened in both awe and disbelief. You're becoming something else. Something powerful. But then, an unexpected twist. The transformation didn't just stop at strength. Derek's body began to react in ways he hadn't expected. His thoughts became fragmented, his emotions erratic, and before long, he could feel something other, something foreign, awakening inside of him. The transformation was both exhilarating and terrifying. Derek's body had never felt so alive, so powerful. His muscles pulsed with new energy, and his senses sharpened to levels he couldn't have imagined before. But with every wave of strength came a strange, unsettling shift in his mind. He could hear his own thoughts, but they didn't feel entirely like his own. They felt foreign. How do you feel now, human? Tara's voice broke through his reverie. Derek blinked, his vision still swimming with strange new perceptions. I feel different. Strong. But also strange. Something's happening inside me. Good. Tara's smile was as cold as ever. That's the essence of survival. The change, the adaptation. But be warned, human. This power comes at a cost. Derek's eyes narrowed. What do you mean by that? Her eyes glinted with something deeper, something almost proud. It's not just your strength that's altered. It's your mind, your emotions. You may feel compelled to act in ways you never would have before. You'll find yourself driven by instincts, by the urges of your new biology. And those urges, well, they may not always align with your human nature. Derek's heart skipped a beat as a cold realization settled in. You mean, I might lose control? Tar nodded, her voice tinged with dark amusement. Yes, control is a luxury, one you may not have much longer. As the days passed, Derek's fears began to manifest. The strange impulses surged through his body like waves crashing against the shore. He could feel his strength growing, but so was something else, something darker. His human side, the part that held on to logic, reason, and morality, was being swallowed up by the alien instincts that were being forced upon him. There were moments when he would look at Tar and feel an overwhelming urge to obey her every command. Not because of any sense of duty, but because his body seemed to crave her dominance, her control. It was as if the alien substance had rewired him, creating a tug-of-war between his humanity and his new alien instincts. It was maddening, yet fascinating. One night, unable to sleep, Derek found himself wandering through the halls of the ship, his mind buzzing with chaotic thoughts. His reflection in the glass walls seemed different. His eyes, his human eyes, were no longer the same. They had a strange glow to them, the pupils dilated in a way that felt almost alien. As he walked, he felt a pull, a compulsion. It led him to Tar's chamber. He tried to fight it, but the urge was overpowering. When he entered the room, Tar was standing by the window, her back turned to him. "I knew you would come," she said without looking at him. Derek froze, his mind a blur. "What's happening to me?" Tar turned slowly, her expression unreadable. "The power is growing within you, human. You're becoming more like us with each passing moment. You're no longer entirely yourself, and soon you will be mine." Derek felt a strange surge of heat course through his veins. His thoughts raced. I must resist, but the pull was stronger. Tara's presence, her power, it was overwhelming. "You don't have to fight it," she said softly, taking a step closer to him. "The more you surrender, the stronger you will become. You will belong to me. You'll understand what it means to be a part of my world." But something in Derek pushed back. "No, I am human. I must remember who I am." He took a deep breath, forcing his mind to clear. The power within him felt like it was ready to burst free, but Derek clenched his fists, his heart racing with the battle. I won't let you control me," he gritted out, his voice trembling but firm. Tar stepped closer, her expression softening slightly. "Control? I'm not asking for control. I'm offering you something more. A chance to become something greater, to transcend the limitations of your human form. Think of the possibilities, Derek." Her voice was persuasive, but Derek wasn't listening. His mind was a whirlwind of conflicting thoughts, each one trying to hold on to the humanity that was slipping away. "Your species is weak," Tar said again, almost as if trying to convince herself. "But you could be an exception. You could be the bridge between my people and yours. You could be our new leader." Her words cut through him like a knife. A leader? Of her people? A part of him wanted to believe it, to embrace the power and the allure of such a role. But another part, the human part, fought desperately to stay in control. He couldn't let her win. "No," he whispered again, more firmly this time. "I will not be a pawn." Tar stepped back, her eyes flickering with something unreadable. "Very well. You may not be ready now, but we'll see how long your resistance lasts. When the time comes, and it will come, you will make your choice." It was a week later when Derek began to notice something strange, something he hadn't expected. His body was changing in ways that had nothing to do with strength or endurance. His stomach felt strange, his body bloated, as if something was growing inside him. At first, he thought it was just a side effect of the alien substance. But as the days passed, it became undeniable. He was pregnant. Not in the way humans experience pregnancy, of course. It wasn't like anything he had ever read about in his textbooks or seen in any medical journal. This wasn't a natural conception. It was a result of the genetic alteration that Tar had subjected him to. The alien DNA inside him had begun to take root, to grow. Derek could feel it, a strange, pulsating energy, like a second heartbeat within him. He felt both terrified and fascinated. This was far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The alien queen had laughed at the idea of breeding with a human, and yet, here he was, carrying something that was part human, part alien. At first, he tried to resist the idea, the notion that he was now carrying life, something that might change everything. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that his entire world was about to be turned upside down. He had thought the power Tar had given him would be the most difficult part, but now, he realized that the true challenge had just begun. He wasn't just fighting for his humanity anymore. He was fighting for the future of an entirely new life that existed inside him. Derek had never felt so lost, so powerless. Even with all the strength coursing through his veins, he was no longer certain who or what he was becoming. The pregnancy was a ticking time bomb, a constant reminder of the irreversible changes that were happening to him. Would he lose himself entirely? Would he become like Tar, cold, calculating, distant? Or could he find a way to hold onto his humanity, even as the alien power inside him grew stronger by the day? One thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. Days turned into weeks, and the changes within Derek became more profound. The alien fetus inside him grew rapidly, almost unnaturally so. The strength in his body was matched only by a strange, growing hunger for power, for dominance. It felt as though every cell in his body was being rewritten, reprogrammed. He was no longer just human, but something far beyond. The alien power within him pulsed constantly, a dark force that beckoned him to surrender, to embrace it fully. It wasn't just physical strength that he felt. It was a craving for control, for command over everything around him. Tar had warned him about this, about how the power would reshape him from the inside out. He could feel it now, the alien instincts taking root, tugging at his consciousness. He was torn between two worlds, the man he had been and the entity he was becoming. It was like a battle for his very soul. The strange dreams began shortly after the pregnancy's progression. Visions of alien landscapes, faraway planets, and beings that looked like Tar filled his mind. He could see through her eyes, feel her thoughts, and it terrified him. The connection was so deep now that it was impossible to tell where her mind ended and his began. Tar visited him often, her presence both comforting and unsettling. Her gaze no longer felt distant or condescending. She watched him closely, studying him as if he were some kind of experiment. But there was also something else, something different. "You are changing, Derek," she said one evening, her voice softer than it had been. "I never thought a human could evolve so quickly. But here we are. You're becoming something extraordinary." Derek stood tall in her presence, despite the deep internal conflict waging inside him. "I'm not like you. I won't be. No matter what you've done to me." Her eyes glinted with something that might have been respect. "You say that now. But when the time comes for you to embrace your new nature, I wonder if you'll still feel the same way." Derek swallowed hard, his hand instinctively touching the small, now distended curve of his abdomen. "What happens when it's born? What happens then?" "You will be the father of a new species," Tar replied, her tone reverberating with a sense of finality. "And together, we will lead a new future." Derek closed his eyes, trying to shut out the overwhelming flood of thoughts and emotions that surged through him. He didn't know what the future held, but the weight of his responsibility was crushing. Was this truly the end of his humanity? Was he destined to become an alien, a mere extension of Tar's power? Or could he find a way to reclaim control? The time came sooner than Derek anticipated. The alien pregnancy had progressed faster than any human gestation, and now, he could feel the labor pains. His body was racked with pain as the alien life within him prepared to emerge. His mind, however, was clouded, dizzy from the overwhelming sensations, from the pull of the alien power that seemed to consume him from the inside out. Tar stood by, watching with cold, unreadable eyes. She had been silent for hours, observing the process, waiting for the moment when the transformation would complete. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice carrying a strange mixture of anticipation and triumph. Derek couldn't answer. His thoughts were jumbled, his senses overloaded. The alien power surged within him, pushing him to the brink of madness. It was no longer just about surviving or resisting. It was about surrendering to the inevitable. He could feel the alien consciousness pushing against his mind, demanding control. But then, something changed. In the chaos of the moment, Derek's humanity fought back. He focused on the one thing that still connected him to Earth: his memories, his life before this alien nightmare had begun. He remembered his family, his friends, the human race that had sent him here as their representative. He thought about the values he had been raised with, the belief in free will, in choice, in the strength of the human spirit. With a force he didn't know he still possessed, Derek fought against the alien power. He could feel the alien instincts pulling at him, trying to overwhelm him, but he refused to let go. He wouldn't lose himself. As the final moments of the transformation came, Derek made a decision. He would not be a pawn in Tar's game. He would not allow himself to become a mere vessel for alien power. He would fight until the very end to maintain control over his own destiny. And just as the alien life within him surged forward, Derek made a final, desperate move. Using the last of his willpower, he rejected the alien power entirely. The room seemed to explode with energy as Derek's body convulsed. The alien fetus, the source of all this power, rejected him in turn. The transformation shattered, collapsing in on itself. The process was violent, but it was the only way to preserve his humanity. Tara's eyes widened in shock and disbelief. She had never seen anything like this. The power that had once coursed through Derek now fizzled out, leaving only a shell of the man he had been before. You rejected it?" Tar asked, her voice barely a whisper. Derek stood, panting, his body trembling from the exertion. He looked at her with defiance. "I chose to stay human, to stay me." For the first time since he had met her, Tar's expression softened. There was no amusement, no condescension. There was only a kind of quiet understanding. "You have strength, human," she said, her voice almost respectful now. "More than I ever gave you credit for. But you still don't understand. The future I'm offering, it will always be there. The choice will always remain." Derek didn't respond. He didn't need to. His body might be scarred, his mind forever altered, but he was still himself. He was still human. In the days that followed, Derek's body slowly began to recover. The alien changes faded, leaving him with the physical scars of his ordeal but no lasting alien influence. His strength returned to normal, and with it, a sense of peace he hadn't felt in weeks. But the knowledge that he had come so close to becoming something else haunted him. Tar, for all her power and pride, left him alone after the incident. There was a quiet respect between them now, but Derek knew their paths would never cross again. She had seen his strength, and in some strange way, she had come to respect it. He returned to Earth, to his people, and shared his story. They marveled at the details, the knowledge he had gained from his time in space. But there was one thing they couldn't understand: the quiet weight in his eyes, the shadow of the transformation he had barely survived. Derek had won his battle, but the war, he knew, was far from over. The future was uncertain, and the aliens were not done with humanity. But for now, Derek had preserved his humanity, his free will, his strength, his identity, and that was enough. Years passed, and Derek's experience became a story told by many. Some believed it was a warning, others saw it as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. But for Derek, the lesson was clear. The true test of survival wasn't in physical strength or alien power. It was in the ability to hold on to oneself, no matter what forces tried to change you. And in that, humanity had proved its worth.